What's up everyone, Conrad Neufeld here, and today we're finishing our discussion on which political party will have the best shot at fixing the housing crisis here in Canada. If you haven't already seen part 1 after you've watched this video, make sure to go check it out, as it will provide some context as to how we reached our conclusion. To this point, we know that the increase in flipper tax that the NDP and Liberals want to impose is bad for Canadians. We know that the rent-to-own program is going to be ineffective at best, or a problem for renters at worst, and that all parties, Conservatives included, have unattainable and unrealistic short-term housing goals. So what did they get right? Let's first start out with Trudeau's Home Buyers Bill of Rights, because I do think that they got a lot of good things in there. And yes, if it ever gets enacted, I'm sure that there will be more than what we're just covering here in this video, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to talk about the main 5 points that Buyers Bill of Rights covers. And man, that's a tongue twister. Do you know how long it took me to record that line? So many takes. Trudeau's Home Buyers Bill of Rights. Trudeau's Home Buyers Bill of Rights. Trudeau's Home Buyers Bill of Rights. Home Buyers Bill of Rights. Haha! Number 1, the right to a home inspection. This is a very, very good idea. If you were buying a home, no ifs, ands, or buts, you should be getting a home inspection. This isn't just relevant during an extreme seller's market like the one that we're in right now. You should be getting it at all times. Usually when people are skipping a home inspection, it's because they're putting in an unconditional offer. They feel if they don't do that, they might lose the house. And that actually might be true. If they don't put in that unconditional offer, they might actually lose the house. I'm here to tell you right now, there is no case where putting in an unconditional offer makes sense. They are dangerous and stupid. If you're going to lose a home because you've asked for an inspection or because you wanted to put in a condition of finance, unless you have 100% cash, then lose the home. I understand that it might be frustrating, and in an extreme seller's market like this, you might have to have an incredible amount of patience. And I also understand that home inspections might not catch everything. But if you don't do the home inspection, you may miss things that might cost you a fortune in the short term and in the long run, and it might even be so bad, and I'm speaking from experiences that I've witnessed, that you might not even be able to live in the home because of something that you've missed. Number 2, a ban on blind bidding. I'm 50-50 on this one, but I lean more towards that a ban on blind bidding should be done. But let me first tell you why a ban on blind bidding shouldn't be done. It shouldn't be done if you're banning it because you think it has an influence on housing prices, specifically if you think that blind bidding is a factor in driving the housing prices up. The bidding wars that you're seeing right now are because of the extreme seller's market, not the thing that's actually causing it. And we know this to be true for a variety of factors, but the easiest case study to point to is Australia. Australia's housing market is very different than ours and actually already operates on the open bidding system. And even though that's true, what you'll notice is that they have a very similar housing crisis right now. Because even with an open bidding system, that doesn't stop soaring housing prices caused by a supply shortage. And that has been happening. In addition to that, generally speaking, what you'll find is that most economists who study different formats of auctions and bidding systems, there is a consensus among them that the different types of auctions and bidding systems don't actually have a different result, at least in terms of the end average sale price. It's a term that's been coined as revenue equivalence, meaning no matter which bidding system you use, the houses on average will come out to be the same price. So both in theory, what the economists have studied, and in practicality, what's been observed in Australia, banning blind bidding isn't going to have an effect on housing prices. But here is where the scales tip in favor of me banning blind bidding. If it's true, all things being equal, that a more open bidding system isn't really going to change the average housing prices, then at the very least what it may do is prevent the occasional homebuyer, not all of them, from rushing in with a clearly irrational number, the outlier, so to speak. And if this change could save even a few people from making an emotionally driven, massive financial mistake, well then hell, I'm all for it. Number 3, require consumers to be informed about their options, including the First-Time Homebuyers Incentive, the FTHBI. Trudeau. I think most people know about the FTHBI. I mean, I personally get asked about it all the time. I don't think people aren't using it because they're not aware of it. I think they're not using it because it sucks. I mean, the program sucked when the NDP had it in BC from 2016 to 2018, and so few people used it that they had to close the program down. It sucked when you released it, and then when you fixed it, it still sucked. It's time to let it go. Just close it up, move on. It didn't work. move on. Now, that being said, I do think there is an opportunity here to mandate that consumers be informed. There's still a lot of information in the real estate industry that's held by real estate boards that isn't public knowledge, and I think that should be cracked wide open. And while we're at it, let's make it a requirement that banks also have to disclose how their penalties are calculated, not just in terms of the actual calculation, because they do that already, but rather in terms of how their penalties stack up against other banks and other institutions and how their penalties are relative to those institutions. Because some of the penalties that are being paid and some of the penalties that are being charged by these banks should be downright criminal. That's the opportunity there. Let's use this opportunity for consumers to be more informed, to protect them, not to push some failed homebuyers program. Number 4, lenders must provide mortgage holders with up to 6-month mortgage deferral for life events. This is a neat idea, but it's so impractical that it'll never actually see the light of day. Implementing a program like this would have so many problems, it would be fraught with so many issues, that I'm just going to give you a quick high-level overview of this. For starters, no lender is going to agree to this willingly. How would you define a life event? How would you verify that the life event has even occurred? Who's going to cover the cost of the missed payments since your mortgage providers still have to make their payments on the bonds and mortgage capitals? And even then, if you force lenders and banks to do it, all they're going to do is take that cost and price it right into the mortgage. That just becomes a new cost that they have to account for. And as a result, prices will go up. In fact, counterintuitively, this might even give them a chance to pad their profits a bit. Number 5, the First Home Savings Account. Now, this is kind of like an RRSP in the sense that you could put money into the program tax-free. But it's also kind of like a TFSA account in the sense that you can remove the money from the program if you're using it to buy a home. Now, there are a bunch of different models that have been floating around as to what this FHSA might look like if and when it gets implemented, but because we don't know which one it is yet, I'm going to keep my comments on this general. And all I'll say is that depending on how it gets implemented, this could be a good tool for first-time homebuyers. Now, outside of the Homebuyers Bill of Rights, both the NDP and the Liberals have had some common ground, at least in terms of the tax credit that's available to first-time homebuyers. They'd like to see it double. Now, there's nothing super revolutionary here, it's kind of a nice to have, nothing overly important. Of the three parties, the NDP has had the least developed platform. But one thing I do think they got right is advocating for qualifying and making available again 30-year amortizations. Once again, this isn't going to solve the major problems, but this is at least a step in the right direction. Qualifying at a 30-year amortization would basically have the same effect as qualifying on a 4.25% stress test. So why not just lower the stress test then? Because a lower stress test allows you to qualify for more of a mortgage by comparing your situation to a lower artificially inflated mortgage payment, while a 30-year amortization allows you to qualify for a larger mortgage payment by actually reducing the payments that you make, thereby making your mortgage more affordable by stretching it out over a larger period of time. On the point of the stress test though, conservatives want to see a plan to fix the stress test for those that are applying that are non-permanent employees, contractors, or small business owners. Now, we're not quite sure what that would look like, but these particular groups really struggle to qualify for a mortgage these days. So making it an option or allowing them to qualify for more of a mortgage in a responsible way, I think would be a really good thing. Another thing that conservatives have indicated that they would be looking at is encouraging more 7 to 10-year fixed mortgages. And whether that would be a good thing or a bad thing entirely depends on how that would be implemented. Once again, just like all of the things that we've talked about in this video, this is more of a nice thing to have more than something that's going to fix the actual housing market. If anything, this is going to be just a positive thing for a select few Canadians. If the government was to encourage more 7 to 10-year mortgages, that's presumably because they're seen as being more stable than their shorter counterparts. After all, the whole point of a stress test is to make sure that you qualify in the event that rates go up. But if you're holding a 10-year mortgage already, then there's a lot of stability present there. The dark side of this, though, is that if you have to break that mortgage for any reason in the first 5 years, you could be in it for a world of hurt as far as the mortgage penalty is concerned. And those penalties could be upwards of $100,000, wiping away any equity that you thought you had built up in your home. Now, if you get past the first 5 years, you're fine, because the Canadian Interest Act states that they can't charge you more than a 3 months interest penalty once you're past that 5-year mark, meaning that interest rate differential penalty, that IRD that you have to worry about, just is a non-factor anymore. So this is where implementation matters. Unaware Canadians may be encouraged to go into these longer terms to qualify for that larger mortgage, even though that mortgage doesn't necessarily fit their short or long-term housing needs, and as a result might end up having to break that mortgage and suffer ungodly penalties. If you're a government and you're encouraging 7 to 10-year mortgages, which for some people I actually don't think is a bad thing, then you also have to be the same government that's prepared to limit the penalties in those first 5 years. So, after 2 videos, what's the conclusion? Who's better for housing? While Trudeau does have some good ideas like his Bill of Rights that could solve some of the smaller problems, I unfortunately don't have too much confidence he could actually solve the larger housing problems. Remember, we're partly here because the proper focus in housing wasn't implemented over the last 6 years that he was in office, and to that end, he appears to be too focused on taxing his way out of a problem that he in part created, which will only make the situation worse, like we discussed in part 1. Now, I'm not exactly an O'Toole fan either, but if you're wanting your vote to help improve the housing situation for both renters and buyers, he is more economically sound, and he'll be the one that probably has the best chance of success.